My mother-in-law had made a huge batch of dumplings and frozen them in the refrigerator. As soon as she stepped out, I dumped the dumplings into the trash. Unexpectedly, she came back in and caught me red-handed. She filmed a video and sent it to the family group chat, wailing, "I made these dumplings for my daughter-in-law, and she threw them all in the trash. Why does she hate me so much?" Before long, the whole family descended upon our house to lecture me. I cooked all the dumplings and served everyone a bowl. As they ate, their expressions changed. Seeing Mom send the video to the group, I knew I was in trouble today. I couldn't help but regret my impulsiveness. I should have waited until night, when it was dark and quiet, to sneak out and dump them in the public trash cans. Then no one would have found out. After Mom finished her tearful accusation in the video, she picked up the dumplings and carried them into the kitchen. I obediently took out the freezer container and watched as she carefully placed the dumplings back inside. Thankfully, most of them were still intact. Only a dozen or so had burst, their fillings oozing out. She rekneaded the dough, rolled out new wrappers, and scooped out the fillings to rewrap them. I waited until she was done before putting them back in the freezer. She was teary-eyed the whole time. I didn't say a word. We completed the task in perfect silence. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Mom went to answer it. A moment later, her cries echoed through the house. My heart tightened as I heard my husband's older brother, David, say, "Mom, don't cry. Where's Roxanne?" Mom sobbed, overwhelmed with hurt. I know Roxanne doesn't like fatty meat, so I specifically bought lean meat. I got up at 4 in the morning to start preparing. Handmade wrappers, hand-chopped fillings, each one carefully wrapped. I spent hours working on them, my hands were frozen stiff, and I didn't even have time for breakfast before I finished the dumplings. But she didn't eat a single one, she threw them all away. What did I do wrong? Why does she hate me so much? Even if I've offended her, the dumplings didn't do anything wrong. Why did she have to throw them in the trash? David's voice was full of sympathy. "Don't be sad, Mom. Where's Roxanne? I'll go talk to her." Before Mom could answer, my husband's younger sister, Crystal, chimed in, "Roxanne, get out here." David immediately scolded her. "How can you address your sister-in-law by her first name?" "Humph," Crystal retorted, "does she deserve to be called a sister-in-law? My mother has never been treated like this in her life. She clearly doesn't respect us at all. Roxanne, come out here." Her footsteps were heading toward the kitchen. Her husband, Mark, tried to pull her back. "Honey, don't get worked up. We're here to resolve this, not to start a fight." David's wife, Sarah, added, "Roxanne is busy in the kitchen. Don't bother her. Let's wait until she comes out." Crystal's voice grew louder. "What could she possibly be busy with? My mom takes care of her every day, doing all the housework for her. What could she possibly be doing? Roxanne, come out here and apologize to my mom." David shouted, "Tone it down a little." Crystal shot back, "Why can't I say it? She's bullying my mom. Am I supposed to treat her like royalty? Roxanne, come out here. Even if she's wrong, she's still your sister-in-law. If there's anything, we'll wait for your brother to deal with it." Crystal sneered. "Does David still expect my brother to protect Mom? He's completely henpecked. If he really cared about Mom, how could he let Roxanne ride roughshod over her?" "That's enough," David said. "Everyone, sit down. I'll go get Roxanne." David came in to get me. "Roxanne, come out and explain why you threw the dumplings in the trash. If it's meant to be, it will be." Since I'd been caught, I had no choice but to face the music. I braced myself and walked into the living room. Crystal pointed at me and started to rant. "Roxanne, you tell me, how has my mother ever wronged you? You were spoiled rotten at your parents' house, you can't even cook a meal. My brother's job is special, he's not home often. My mother felt sorry for you, so she's been living with you to take care of you ever since you got married. 3 meals a day, she cooks and serves you. She sweeps and mops the floor for you. She washes your clothes and pants. She even washes your underwear. She practically worships you like an ancestor. Isn't she good enough to you? Why did you have to humiliate her like that?" Crystal was heavily pregnant. She was 5 months along. About to be a mom, but still had such a temper. David chimed in. "Roxanne, Mom knew you liked dumplings, so she made them especially for you. You like chive dumplings, so Mom cleaned each chive stalk one by one and washed them thoroughly. You don't eat fillings made with pork belly. So Mom bought pork leg meat just for you. Mom says the ground meat from the grinder doesn't taste good, so she chopped it all by hand. She's made dumplings her whole life, and everyone who's tasted her fillings says they're delicious. When you first came to our house, didn't you say they were good too?" I had to admit that was true. Back then, I thought my mother-in-law's dumplings were delicious, better than the ones sold in street food stalls. David continued, "Mom says handmade wrappers are chewy and delicious. So she always buys flour and makes the dough herself, rolling out each wrapper by hand. Then she carefully wraps each one. Where else are you going to find such handmade dumplings, except from my mother? That was true. These days, the fillings and wrappers sold on the street aren't handmade. Mom also chimed in, crying. I was afraid you wouldn't get used to our family after you married in, that you'd feel wronged. So I've been with you all the time, taking care of you like my own daughter. You don't like to eat breakfast. I was afraid you'd get sick from being hungry, so I made so many dumplings and put them in the fridge. That way, you could cook a bowl of dumplings every morning and eat them. But you treated my good intentions like dirt. What did I do wrong? Why are you so angry? Tell me, I'll change. Wah wah. See, the so-called explanation was just to listen to them berate me. They only talked about how good Mom was to me, and condemned my lack of respect. But no one asked why I did what I did. Just as I was about to explain, Crystal jumped in again. Roxanne, do you even have a conscience? My mother is so good to you, she treats you with all her heart and soul. How do you repay her? From the time you met my brother until now, have you ever bought her a single piece of clothing? For the 2 months since you got married, my mother has been subsidizing your meals while taking care of you. Her own sons and daughters don't even need her money. Her pension is all being spent on you alone while my brother is not home. Not only are you ungrateful, but you're also wasting her hard work. You're a complete and utter freeloader. I couldn't help but laugh. She's good to me? Is that what she told you? David immediately pointed to Sarah and Mark. I don't need Mom to say it. Ask your sister-in-law, ask Mark, does Mom treat them the same way she treats me and Crystal? Sarah nodded. Mom is really good. Mark also agreed. Yes, Mom treats us all the same. Crystal's voice grew louder. Did you hear that? Sarah and my husband don't even have the same last name as us, and they're not Mom's own children. But Mom treats them like her own. Are you saying she's singling you out? You're still a new bride, Mom is only trying to please you, how would she dare to make you unhappy? Not just my mom, which mother-in-law would dare to give a new bride who's only been married for 2 months a hard time? If my mom is really singling you out, it must be because you're not good to her, and she's so angry that she can't stand it anymore. I chuckled. You've said everything. Crystal retorted. Did I say anything wrong? Just now, you threw the dumplings that my mom made into the trash, and she didn't even dare to get angry at you, she could only cry to us. That's enough to show that you often bully her. It's just that my brother isn't home, otherwise he would have slapped you. Crystal's anger was palpable. I could tell that she wanted to rush over and hit me. But Mark grabbed her arm and kept saying, calm down, honey, be careful of the baby. The siblings had said everything possible. They believed that even if my mother-in-law wasn't good to me, it was still my fault. So what was the point of me explaining? I said bluntly, David told me to throw them away. David was my husband's name. David was Roxanne's husband. My words made Crystal even more furious. She jumped up, pointing her finger at me and yelling, that's bull. Even if my brother spoils you, he would never tell you to throw away the dumplings that my mom worked so hard to make. You did something wrong and you're trying to blame my brother. Mark, frightened, held her waist and shouted, don't jump, don't jump. Mom cried even louder. Roxanne, you have to speak from your conscience. Your brother is at work and not home, how could he have told you to throw them away? My husband's job was confidential, and after he went to work, he had to turn off his phone and hand it in. So whenever he was at work, he was completely out of contact, and no one could reach him. The Xie family knew this too. That's why no one believed me when I said that. I said, he used to say that if I didn't want to eat something, I should just throw it in the trash and not force myself to eat it. Crystal shouted, he was talking about takeout or snacks, not the dumplings that my mom made. David's face darkened. Roxanne, don't think that just because your brother isn't home, you can lie however you want. We're seriously talking to you, and we hope you can face your own problems. Face my problems? What a joke. It was pointless for me to say anything. They only believed their mom anyway, they would never believe an outsider like me. Seeing that it was noon, I got up and said, I'll make something for you to eat. Mom immediately said, I'll do it, you don't know how to cook. Crystal grabbed her. You need to learn. Since you got married, you have to have the awareness of being a daughter-in-law. She's supposed to be serving you, why is the mother-in-law serving the daughter-in-law? Can you serve her for the rest of your life? Mom sighed. The dishes she makes don't taste good. Crystal snorted. I don't care if they taste good or not, as long as she makes them, even if it's dog poop, I'll eat it. That was exactly what I wanted. I went into the kitchen, took out the biggest pot in the house, and washed it clean. I boiled a pot of water, and dumped all the dumplings in. After they were cooked, I served everyone a big bowl. Then I carefully carried them out. Mom suddenly panicked. I made these especially for you to eat every morning. You're cooking them all at once. What are you going to eat in the future? Crystal rolled her eyes. Mom, please, she doesn't care about your dumplings. Why are you worrying about her? If she doesn't eat breakfast, she doesn't eat breakfast. It's not you who's hungry anyway. Mom said to me again, your brother and sister rarely come over, you should make some good dishes. What's it going to look like if you just cook a bowl of dumplings? I said, you guys eat the dumplings first, I'll go stir-fry some dishes. David said, since they're cooked, let's just eat them. Come to think of it, it's been 2 months since I've had Mom's handmade dumplings. Crystal said, me too. I want to eat them but I can't. Mom is biased towards my brother and always makes them for them, and they don't even appreciate it. Sarah and Mark helped to bring the dumplings to everyone. I poured a dish of vinegar and brought it out. The Sia siblings eagerly picked up dumplings, dipped them in vinegar, and put them in their mouths. Sarah and Mark also started eating. Only Mom didn't touch her chopsticks. I picked up one and fed it to her mouth. Mom, you've been busy all day, you must be tired. Your daughter-in-law will feed you one to thank you for taking care of me. Her mouth was tightly closed. What's wrong? Mom doesn't like to eat dumplings? You made them yourself, you have to taste them, right? Crystal said, my mom loves to eat dumplings the most. Mom, eat. It's rare for her to show you some filial piety, just enjoy it. Mom turned her face to the side. I'm not eating, I don't have an appetite. Crystal, while wolfing down the dumplings, glared at me. Look at how angry you've made my mom. She ate several in a row, probably swallowing too quickly, without tasting the flavor. David felt something was wrong after eating too. He spat it out onto the table and asked, what's in this filling? Sarah also spat it out. Mine seems to have paper towels in it, and noodles. Mark spat it out and said, mine has vermicelli. Crystal made a crunching sound. Ah, blech. She spat it out and said, why are there bones? David said, why is today's dumpling filling so messed up, and the taste is so weird and disgusting? Crystal kept spitting. Not only is the filling disgusting, but the wrapper is also disgusting, like mud was mixed in when it was needed. Did my mom really make these dumplings? I replied, she really did make them herself. That's impossible, my mom's cooking is so good, how could she make them so disgusting? I smiled. Then you'll have to ask your mom. It's strange, why doesn't she eat the dumplings she made herself? Mom suddenly burst into tears. Roxanne, if you didn't want to eat the dumplings, you could have told me. I wouldn't have made them. Why did you have to hurt me? What exactly did you put in the filling and the flour? She was actually trying to shift the blame onto me? I felt anger rising in my chest and malice growing in my heart. I picked up the bowl of dumplings and splashed it all over her. Wham! Dumplings covered Mom's head and face. Ah! Mom let out a scream. Oh my God! Sarah backed away in horror. Crystal roared, Roxanne. You actually splashed my mom, are you crazy? It was complete chaos. I said in a fluster, I'm sorry, my hand slipped. Mom, quickly rinse it with cold water. I grabbed Mom's arm, dragged her into the kitchen, turned on the faucet, and held her head under the running water. David rushed in and yanked me away. Roxanne, are you trying to kill my mom? I stepped back and said, if you don't cool it down quickly, her face will get blisters and it will hurt a lot. He helped Mom up and, seeing her face was red, quickly filled the sink and dunked her face into the cold water. Mom struggled desperately. He said, Mom, don't move, just bear with it for a moment. Crystal waddled in, shouting, David, what are you doing? Are you trying to drown Mom? David pulled Mom out of the water and explained, Mom's face is burned. If we don't cool it down quickly, it will blister. Then take her to the hospital. Put burn cream on it. Putting her in cold water like that, aren't you afraid she'll go into shock? Mom was gasping for breath, unable to speak for a long time. David replied, I'll take Mom to the hospital right now. We returned to the living room. Crystal lunged at me, ready to hit me. Roxanne, you bitch, you've harmed my mom like this, I've put up with you for so long. I picked up another bowl of dumplings and slammed it heavily at her feet. She screamed in fright and quickly backed away, almost falling. Mark supported her from behind. She cursed, she's crazy, this woman is crazy. My mom has lived most of her life without being bullied like this. I said coldly, I've lived my life without being bullied like this either. Who's bullying you? You burned my mom and you think you're in the right? This is intentional assault. I'm calling the police to arrest you. She took out her phone and dialed the emergency number. David snatched it away and roared, why are you calling the police for a family matter? Aren't you ashamed? Mom finally caught her breath and cried loudly, it's all my fault, I'm old and useless, that's why I'm disliked. I might as well die, I'll go out and get hit by a car right now. She opened the door and ran out. David rushed out to chase after her. Crystal pointed at me angrily and roared, "Roxanne, if anything happens to my mom, I'll make you pay with your life." They all ran out. I looked at the mess on the floor and sighed in relief. As the saying goes, it's easy to invite a god in, but hard to send them away. The uninvited goddess in my house had finally been sent away. Before I got married, I never thought that my mother-in-law would come and live with us. Sarah had children. Crystal was pregnant again. And Mom was already taking care of Crystal. So I thought that Mom would only consider coming to our house when I got pregnant. But on the second day of our marriage, Mom knocked on our door. She said to my husband, "You're not home when you're at work. Roxanne just got married and isn't familiar with everything. I'm here to take care of her so you don't have to worry while you're at work." She brought her luggage, moved into the spare bedroom on her own, and then went into the kitchen to start cooking. My husband and I exchanged glances. I wrote on my computer and needed absolute quiet. So I didn't like living with other people. But Mom's intentions were good, so we couldn't refuse. I figured that his mother was worried that I wouldn't adapt to everything after getting married, so she came to stay with me for a while. Once I got used to it, she would go back to take care of Crystal. But I never expected her to stay for 3 months. Now that she was finally gone, she shouldn't be back. I cleaned the room and changed the password on the door lock. Then I sat down at my computer and focused on my writing. Not long after, Crystal knocked loudly on the door. "Roxanne, open the door, I'm here to get my mom's clothes." I took Mom's luggage out and handed it to Mark, and was about to close the door. Crystal pushed the door open and roared, "You caused Mom to be hospitalized, and you're not going to the hospital to take care of her." I looked at her pregnant belly and said, "Oh, okay." I started to walk out. Crystal backed away in surprise. "Aren't you going to change clothes?" "Oh, then I'll change clothes." I suddenly jumped back inside and slammed the door shut. Crystal waited for a while, and when I didn't come out, she pounded on the door and roared, "Roxanne. What do you mean? You don't even care that Mom is in the hospital?" I said through the door, "Your mom has sons and daughters, it's not up to me, an outsider, to take care of her. But I'm pregnant, my brother has to work, and David isn't home. Sarah not only has to work, but also has to pick up and drop off the kids. If you don't go, who will?" I retorted, "None of you biological children are free, so you want to outsource your filial piety to me, the daughter-in-law? Where do you get the face to ask that? I'm not free either." She pounded on the door and cursed, "You're the one who caused Mom to be hospitalized, why shouldn't you take care of her?" I turned a deaf ear and didn't open the door. She had no way to deal with me, and Mark pulled her away. In the evening, my phone kept buzzing with messages. Many videos were uploaded to the family group chat. There was Mom lying in the hospital bed, groaning. There was a doctor giving her N4. There was Crystal helping her to the bathroom. All of them were just trying to play the victim. They wanted to make me feel guilty, remorseful, and to take the initiative to take care of her. My mood was calm and serene. I muted the group and turned off the sound, focusing on my writing. After a while, I figured that Mom should have been discharged from the hospital, so I took another look at the family group chat. Sure enough, Mom had moved into Crystal's house. In the video, Crystal, with her pregnant belly, was feeding Mom, massaging her shoulders, and helping her put on and take off her clothes. She said sarcastically, "Mom, is your youngest daughter better than some people?" Mom nodded and praised, "My youngest daughter is the best." I laughed. "Your mother and daughter, it would be strange if you weren't good." From then on, I rarely went into the group to look at messages, and focused on my writing every day. Half a month later, I finished my manuscript and packed my bags to go out and find inspiration for my next book. Only 2 days after I left, Mom called me. "Roxanne, I can't open this door. Can you help me open it?" I didn't expect her to come to my house again. I replied, "I'm not home." Crystal's voice roared, "Then tell Mom the password. It's not your house alone, why won't you let my mom in?" I curled my lips. "Hello? Hello? What did you say?" "I'm in the mountains, the signal is bad." Mom said, "Roxanne, are you eating properly? You must eat breakfast, otherwise your stomach will have problems. Wear more clothes when you're out, don't catch a cold." I continued, "Hello? Hello, hello. Are you still listening? The signal is really bad." Crystal was so angry that she blurted out, "Mom, are you stupid? People have already kicked you out, and you're still worrying about her." Mom sighed. "When your brother was young, I was too strict with him, so he had a problem with me. Now, if I don't take good care of his wife, I'm afraid he'll hate me even more." Crystal said angrily, "My brother is blind, marrying such a horrible woman. When he comes back, I'll make him divorce her. If he doesn't divorce her, I'll put Roxanne's abuse of Mom online and ruin her reputation." The phone hung up. I knew that Crystal had said that on purpose, just to threaten me into giving in to Mom. After the trip, I went home and continued to write. Soon it was almost New Year's, and my husband was on vacation. He hugged me as soon as he came into the house and asked, "Have you been wronged?" After he turned on his phone, he would see the group messages. I said, "No, it's your mother who's been wronged." He didn't say anything more, just focused on being affectionate with me. He had been working on a very tight schedule, and hadn't been back since our honeymoon. After 3 months apart, we missed each other very much. After only 2 hours of alone time, my husband's phone rang. It was Mom calling. "Son, you and Roxanne go to your brother's house for a family meeting to solve their problems." My husband asked, "What's wrong with David?" "Your sister-in-law has made a mistake, we're going to help her correct it." "Okay." I was confused. I had a good impression of Sarah. She wasn't as enthusiastically fake as Mom, nor as arrogant as Crystal. She was gentle, virtuous, careful, diligent, and polite. I couldn't imagine what kind of mistake Sarah could make that would require the whole family to hold a family meeting to criticize her. My husband said, "Let me see the group chat." I also picked up my phone and looked at the group. I found out that David and Sarah had gotten into a fight. David tagged Sarah in the group, "Honey, did you buy a quilt for your mom?" Sarah replied, "Yeah, I bought one." "Why didn't you discuss it with me?" Sarah said, "I've been married into your family for more than 10 years, and it's the first time I've bought a quilt for my mom. It cost less than $1,000, do I have to ask your permission?" David said seriously, "Unless you're buying something for the family, you should tell me, even if it's only $100. Besides, this isn't the first time. I reminded you the last time you bought clothes for your mom." Sarah cried, "Wasn't it my mom's birthday? I've been married into your family for more than 10 years, and I've only bought her one piece of clothing. Am I being unreasonable?" David got angry. "Are you right in the head? Did I say you couldn't buy it? I'm asking why you didn't discuss it with me." Sarah cried with a choked voice. "I make more than $8,000 a month, don't I even have the freedom to spend $1,000? Do I have to discuss it with you? I'm not freeloading, I'm spending my own money to buy things for my mom, why can't I?" "What do you mean your own money? Are you my wife or not?" The couple started to argue like that. I said, "We don't need to go, right? It's normal for couples to argue, it would be meddling if we went." My husband said, "This is what I told you about before, solving problems with family meetings." When we got married, my husband told me that his family had a habit of holding family meetings. A couple's problem was everyone's problem. If one person made a mistake, the whole family would mobilize to criticize them, helping them correct their shortcomings and mistakes. I nodded. The last time they all came to our house, it was to hold a family meeting to criticize me, but I didn't accept it, and it ended on a sour note. My husband stroked my head. "I told you, if my mom is being annoying, don't pay attention to her, I'll deal with it when I get back." He was afraid that I would be criticized by the whole family, so he repeatedly told me not to provoke Mom. That's why I was a little regretful that I threw the dumplings into the trash that day, and Mom caught me. I asked, "Are Sarah and I going to be on trial today?" My husband laughed and put his arm around my head, saying, "Don't worry, with your husband here, no one will dare to try you." I also wanted to see how they were going to judge me. If they made me angry, I would cause chaos. When we arrived at David's house, Crystal and her husband and Mom were already there. Everyone sat down, and Sarah poured tea for everyone. There were no seats left. There was a chair in the middle of the living room. Mom pointed to the chair. "David's wife, sit down and tell us what's going on." I rolled my eyes. Judging by the situation, they were clearly treating Sarah like a criminal. David crossed his arms and looked at Sarah with confidence. "If you think you're right, then you can start." Sarah sat down in the chair and explained with resentment. "I've been married for so many years, every year I buy clothes for Mom, and gifts for David's siblings. I've fulfilled my responsibilities as a daughter-in-law, right? But I haven't fulfilled my responsibilities as a daughter. My parents' house is far away, and I only go back once every few years. The last time I went back, I saw that the quilt on my mom's bed was very thin. I was afraid she would catch a cold, so I bought a set of bedding and sent it back. It cost less than $1,000, and David has been nagging me ever since, as if I committed some heinous crime." Crystal opened her mouth. "Sarah has filial piety, that's a good thing, we have to acknowledge that. But you're married to David, and the money you earn belongs to your joint property. If the money you spend isn't used for family expenses, then David has the right to know where you spent the money. To put it bluntly, what if you bought something for another man, wouldn't David feel very upset? This is a sign of David loving you, it means he's jealous. Of course, I know that Sarah wouldn't do anything so scandalous. But if you're spending money on your parents' family, you should also tell my brother. Send it to your mom in my brother's name, your mom would be happy, and my brother would also save face. Right?" David said, "Crystal understands me. Honey, you've lived with me for more than 10 years, don't you understand my feelings? If you secretly buy things for your mom, what will others think of me? Won't they say that I'm an unfilial son-in-law? Sarah nodded. I understand. Next time I buy something, I'll discuss it with you. David patted Sarah on the shoulder in a patronizing manner. That's my good wife. It's okay, it's good to be able to admit your mistakes, you're still a good comrade. I had a feeling that something wasn't right. How did it become Sarah's fault alone? They'd been married for so many years, and David hadn't taken the initiative to buy anything for his mother-in-law, let alone the fact that Sarah had only bought one piece of clothing and a set of bedding for her family, and it was all her fault, and she was being criticized by the whole family? At this point, Mom made a summarizing statement. Since you married into our family, then you're a member of the David family. Everything you have belongs to the David family. So don't say that you're spending the money you earned. A family shouldn't talk like two separate families. Otherwise, what if David secretly spends money behind your back? If he spends money on other women, would you be happy? I saw Sarah's expression visibly stiffen. David quickly interrupted, Mom, what are you talking about? I'm not stupid, why would I spend money on other women? Mom looked at Sarah and said, you see, David is so loyal to you, couples should be loyal and devoted, and family money shouldn't be spent on outsiders. I finally understood. It seemed that after a woman married into their family, the money she earned could be spent on her husband, her parents-in-law. It could even be spent on her siblings-in-law. But it couldn't be spent on her own family. Because for the David family, anyone who didn't have the David surname was an outsider. The wife's family was definitely an outsider. I thought Sarah was going to refute Mom. But she didn't, she just said in a low voice, I understand, Mom. David patted her on the shoulder. Go make dinner. Mom and your siblings came here especially to solve our problems. They've worked hard, so make some good dishes. Sarah silently went to the kitchen. I remembered Mom asking me to make some good dishes the other day, and I couldn't help but chuckle. So their family ganged up to bully someone, and the person being bullied had to treat them with good food and wine. But Sarah didn't say anything herself, so I couldn't stand up for her either. After they had eaten their fill, David said with a beaming face, our family matter has been resolved, now let's talk about David's family matter. My husband smiled. Brother, you called us here mainly to talk about my wife, right? You know it, last time you weren't home, your wife told a lot of lies. Now that you're back, I want to hear what you have to say. My husband said, I want to hear what my wife has to say first. David placed the chair in the middle of the living room. Sister-in-law, come and sit. Just as I was about to explode, my husband put his arm around my shoulders. My wife will sit with me. Mom's expression immediately turned ugly. Crystal exclaimed, Brother, do you know the rules? My husband looked at her and asked, what rules? In our family, those who have done wrong always have to sit in the middle, so everyone can see their attitude of admitting their mistakes. What do you mean by protecting her like this? My husband laughed. She's my wife, why is it wrong for me to protect her? When you were being bullied by your husband's family, you didn't want Mark to protect you. Crystal said unconvinced, I didn't do anything wrong. My husband sneered. Then what did my wife do wrong? She hasn't even said anything yet, and you've already convicted her. Crystal frowned. Brother, we're helping you. My husband slammed his hand on the coffee table. You're bullying my wife, and you have the nerve to say you're helping me? Helping me with what? Helping me destroy my home? That smack startled everyone. Crystal jumped up angrily. Why are you yelling? Mark quickly pulled her back. Don't get excited, be careful of the baby. The family had originally decided to judge me like they had judged Sarah. But they didn't expect my husband to first make it clear that he was standing on my side. They were all dumbfounded for a moment. David got up to smooth things over. David, you and your wife were separated soon after you got married, and you haven't seen each other for several months. We all understand that you feel sorry for your wife. But right is right, and wrong is wrong. You can't just blindly protect your wife. Our father died early, and it wasn't easy for Mom to raise the three of us. Now isn't it right for us to be filial to her? Your job is special, so you can't be filial to Mom under her care, we understand that too. Mom is the one helping you take care of your wife, and she doesn't even have time to pick up and drop off my daughter. She also doesn't have time to take care of Crystal who is pregnant. We didn't say anything. But what did your wife do? She doesn't eat the food that Mom cooks, she orders takeout. She throws the dumplings that Mom made for her into the trash. That day when we went to your house, we originally wanted to find out about the situation. But Roxanne actually splashed the cooked dumplings on Mom's face. They were freshly cooked dumplings, steaming hot. How high was the temperature? If I hadn't quickly gotten Mom to the sink to cool down, Mom's face would have been ruined. During Mom's hospitalization, Roxanne didn't come to the hospital to see her, she didn't even make a phone call. David, you tell me, is your wife doing the right thing? Before my husband could speak, Mom chimed in, repeating how hard she had worked to take care of me, and accusing me of being ungrateful. She emphasized how tired she was that day making the dumplings by hand. She tearfully accused me of throwing the dumplings into the trash and wasting food. I interrupted. I didn't waste it. After Mom picked up the dumplings from the trash, I cooked them and served them to you, but you only ate a few and didn't eat them, so I threw them in the trash. It was you who wasted them, not me. Crystal's eyes widened. What? You picked up the dumplings from the trash and cooked them for us to eat? No wonder they tasted weird. I looked at her like she was an idiot. Mom took a video that day, the dumplings were in the trash, and no one objected when I cooked them for you to eat. Crystal couldn't help but blame her mother. Mom, why didn't you remind us that day? I found it funny. How else could she remind you? She didn't even eat them herself, couldn't you see that? Mom said she didn't have an appetite. Nonsense, if you saw that the dumplings were picked up from the trash, you wouldn't have an appetite either. I can't take it anymore. Crystal got up and ran, and soon, the sound of vomiting came from the bathroom. My husband asked me with concern, did you eat them too? Of course not. I smiled. I added half a bowl of cold water to my bowl of dumplings, I couldn't eat them. My husband didn't understand. Why add cold water? I replied, if someone tries to give me trouble, I'll splash it in their face. David said angrily, you planned to splash my mom when you were cooking the dumplings? No, whoever provokes me, I'll splash them. I smiled at him menacingly. If you provoke me, I'll take your bowl and splash it. Then it won't just be a matter of staying in the hospital for 3 days. I thought that David was going to hit me that day. If he dared to slap me, I would splash him with the scalding hot dumplings, and it would be clear self-defense. You? David's face turned red, but he couldn't say anything. My husband suddenly realized and said, so the dumplings you splashed on Mom weren't hot. That's right. After all, I didn't want to go to jail. David said angrily, David, is this about whether the dumplings were hot or not? Does that mean that if the dumplings aren't hot, your wife can splash them on Mom's face? At this time, Crystal came out of the bathroom and also accused me of hurting Mom and not taking care of her. The siblings glared at me indignantly. I was expressionless. After they calmed down, my husband asked slowly, Mom, are you finished? No. Then please continue. Mom said, I picked up the dumplings from the trash, but it wasn't for her to cook for your brother and sister to eat. I interrupted her. You wanted me to eat them, and that's what you call taking care of me. Didn't I take care of you? David and Crystal also roared at me. Didn't Mom cook for you? Didn't she wash your clothes? You're an ungrateful wretch. 3 mouths opened fire on me at the same time, so loudly that I covered my ears. All right. My husband suddenly raised his voice. You're finished, now it's my wife's turn to speak, be quiet. The people stopped arguing. Crystal pointed to the chair. Sit in the middle and talk. I stared at her coldly. You can sit in the middle and listen. Why? I didn't do anything wrong. My husband said sternly, not wrong? You're a married woman, why are you interfering in your parents' family's affairs? And you're yelling at your sister-in-law. Crystal was shocked and aggrieved. Mom told me to come. Mom told you to come, then Mom is wrong. You should have behaved like a guest if you came, why are you telling your sister-in-law what to do? Crystal was unconvinced. I'm not just talking about your wife, I criticized Sarah the same way. My husband sneered. Are you still in the right? I don't care whether David protects Sarah or not, but I must protect my wife. Don't even think about bullying her. The room suddenly became quiet. The David family's faces showed visible embarrassment. Sarah's face was a little sad. Mark, on the other hand, was a little gleeful. This outwardly harmonious family had the corner of its facade torn open today by my husband. Of course, I was probably the culprit. David tried to smooth things over. David, Crystal, don't argue, let's listen to Roxanne's explanation first. Mom suddenly burst into tears. It's all my fault, wah. My husband said, Mom also knows you're wrong? In the past, every time we had a family meeting, I sat in the middle and was criticized by all of you in turns. Now you want my wife to sit in the middle, she hasn't said a word, and you've already convicted her. Do you think we're easy to bully? David said unhappily, David, that's not right, we're not targeting you, didn't we criticize Sarah just now? We just hope to help your wife correct her mistakes and let her integrate into our family as soon as possible. My husband sneered and interrupted him. A small matter like Sarah buying a set of bedding, is it necessary for you to make such a big fuss and take it to such extremes? Criticizing Sarah is to set an example for my wife, Sarah is just a victim of this. I glanced at Sarah, and tears streamed down her face. She might only realize now that David had deliberately questioned her in the group chat. How heartbroken she must be. In order to teach his sister-in-law who had only been married for 3 months a lesson, her husband dragged her out to be sacrificed. David's face turned red, and he shouted, "David, stop stirring up trouble between me and my wife. Sarah knows how I treat her." My husband laughed. "Then why are you trying to stir up trouble between me and my wife? Sending sarcastic messages to my wife in the group is for me to see. You want me to come back and teach her a lesson, right? What are the consequences of me teaching her a lesson? Divorce? Would it be very beneficial to you if I got divorced?" David said, "We won't let you get divorced, we just hope you can see what kind of person your wife really is." Crystal also said, "That's right, we're just afraid you'll be fooled. Even if I'm fooled by my wife, I'm willing to." The siblings were speechless. My husband looked at me. "Honey, continue, let them see how you're actually harming Mom." I said, "To tell you the truth, after David started working, Mom and I haven't eaten together. She cooks her food, and I cook mine." Crystal roared, "You still have the nerve to say that? Mom cooks for you, but you don't eat it, you order takeout, forcing Mom to eat leftovers every day." I suddenly didn't want to say anything anymore. "Alright, it's a waste of words to reason with people like you who don't understand reason. Turn on the TV, I'll cast my screen, and you can see for yourselves." My husband got up and turned on the TV. I cast the surveillance videos that I had saved on my phone to the TV. The first part was about the time when my husband was on his honeymoon. At that time, Mom took care of us very thoughtfully. In the morning, she would get up early to cook porridge, steam buns, stir-fry side dishes, make egg pancakes, and heat up milk. We would get up, wash up, and start eating. The three of us would sit around the table, happily. After eating, she would wash clothes and mop the floor, constantly busy. Crystal murmured while watching, "Look at how good Mom is to you." Mom is biased towards David and his wife. Even I, a pregnant woman, didn't get to enjoy that. No one paid attention to her, only Mom asked nervously, "David, how did you do this? Why can I see this on your TV?" David explained to her, "These are the videos that your sister-in-law recorded on her phone, and she cast them on our TV." Mom's lips trembled with anger. "What? She even secretly filmed me." My husband said, "Mom, what are you nervous about? Roxanne didn't secretly film you, I installed the surveillance." Crystal questioned, "Why did you install surveillance in the house? Did you want to monitor Mom's work?" My husband said with amusement, "I installed the surveillance before I got married. I installed it in the living room, so when your sister-in-law goes out, she can check the situation at home at any time. I installed surveillance in the kitchen, because I was worried that when your sister-in-law is working, she might forget about the food stewing in the pot, so it can alert her." Crystal was speechless. The content that followed in the video left her even more speechless. My husband's honeymoon ended, and he went to work. The next morning, Mom cooked a pot of porridge and said to me, "Roxanne, let's keep it simple for the two of us. We'll just have some porridge and kimchi. When David comes back, we'll cook some good dishes." I said, "He won't be back until the new year. Are we going to eat kimchi for the next few months?" "Not exactly. I mean, we've been eating too much greasy food lately. Let's eat something light for the next few days." That made sense. We had indeed been eating a lot of meat and rich food during our honeymoon. I agreed. Mom cooked a big pot of porridge in the morning, and the two of us didn't finish it. She heated it up and ate it for lunch, and there was still half a bowl left. In the evening, she added water and cooked it thinly, turning it into 2 bowls. I finished a bowl in one go. We ate porridge and kimchi for 3 days straight. On the 4th morning, when Mom called me to eat, there were 2 bowls of black goo on the table. She said with a smile, "This is multigrain flour that I bought yesterday. It's been roasted, so you can just mix it with hot water and eat it. We'll have this for breakfast from now on. It's healthy, helps with weight loss, and doesn't cost much. 10 yuan a pound, and we 2 girls won't be able to finish it in half a month." I said, "This isn't enough to fill me up." She said, "It's supposed to be not filling. Experts say that eating 70% full at a meal is a healthy eating habit. Young people don't pay attention to health, eating meat and rich food every day, stuffing themselves with delicious things, and preferring to starve if they don't like something. If you keep going like this, your body will collapse early. I'm very worried." She was saying all this for my own good. What could I say? I had multigrain goo for breakfast, and for lunch, she cooked thin rice porridge with a stir-fried vegetable dish and a bowl of kimchi. In the evening, we added water to the leftover rice porridge and cooked it thinly. After eating this for a week, I couldn't take it anymore and ordered takeout. A portion of twice-cooked pork, a portion of yusyang shredded pork, and 2 boxes of rice. Mom's face darkened when she saw the takeout arrive. "There's food and vegetables at home, why are you still buying?" I said, "I want to eat meat." I pushed a box of rice towards her. She said, "I'm not eating, I'm eating rice porridge." She didn't eat the twice-cooked pork or the yusyang shredded pork either, she just drank rice porridge and ate vegetables. The video ended. I said, it was from that day that Mom and I started eating separately. Although we ate separately, Mom and I didn't argue, and we treated each other with respect. The Xie siblings, however, were even more furious. Crystal said, you ordered takeout every day, eating meat and rich food, while letting my mom eat rice porridge and vegetables? How cruel. How could you eat it? David said, David, you tell us, is your wife doing the right thing? My husband said, are there problems with your eyes? Didn't you see my wife ask Mom to eat meat? If she doesn't eat it herself, can my wife force feed her? Crystal said, then she shouldn't be eating alone. I sneered. Are you saying that I should eat rice porridge and vegetables with Mom? In any case, our family doesn't allow eating alone. But your mom also eats alone. That's nonsense, my mom never eats alone. Then let's continue watching. I clicked on the next video. Mom was in a restaurant, buying a portion of steamed pork belly with preserved mustard greens, a large bowl of rice, and a fried egg soup, and eating it with relish. Crystal was being unreasonable. My mom was just tempted by the sight of you eating takeout, that's why she went to the restaurant to eat. I laughed. Please look at the time the video was taken. She ate alone in the restaurant first, and I saw her, and I was so angry that I ordered takeout. I was wondering why I was hungry and eating snacks in the study every day, but she was able to resist. It turned out she was secretly eating outside. Mom immediately chimed in. That's right, you're hungry and secretly eating snacks in the study, can't I be hungry and eat things outside? I retorted, then what did you mean when you told your daughter that you were spending all your retirement money on me? My husband also said, spending your retirement money? I transferred 10,000 yuan to you, you haven't even finished spending it in the past few months. Mom's face turned red. Crystal exclaimed again. Didn't Mom make dumplings for you later? Even if Mom offended you before, this can be considered an apology, right? But why did you add all sorts of weird things to the filling and flour? I understand, you did it on purpose. So after Mom made the dumplings, you threw them in the trash. You wanted to frame Mom like this, so you could kick her out of your house. I smiled. You're really smart. I did ask her to leave my house. I told her that I needed peace and quiet. But she always played short videos very loudly. Or she would have video calls with you, and she would talk like she was arguing, even the people across the street would tell her to be quiet. She disturbed me during the day so I couldn't calm down and write, so I had to work overtime at night. Crystal said, couldn't you just ask Mom to be quiet? I found it amusing. Do you think I didn't ask her? She would lower her voice for a while, and then it would get loud again. I couldn't write during the day, so I could only work overtime at night. I stayed up until 2 or 3 in the morning to sleep. But she would call me to get up at 6 o'clock to eat. I said I wasn't eating and told her not to bother me. She would knock on the door again and again, saying that it wasn't good not to eat breakfast, and that it's good for your body to sleep early and get up early. It was so annoying. I was only enduring it because of your brother. In the end, I couldn't bear it anymore and told her that she wasn't allowed to call me to eat breakfast, and she wasn't allowed to watch short videos or make phone calls at home. If she couldn't do it, I asked her to leave. She said that not letting her watch short videos was like taking her life. She chose to leave, but she was worried that I wouldn't eat breakfast. So she said she would make some dumplings and put them in the fridge for me to cook and eat every morning. Crystal interrupted again. Look, even though you were going to kick my mom out, she was still thinking of you in every way. I didn't want to waste my breath anymore and clicked on the next video. Mom did work hard to make the dumplings, let's see how she made them. The recording time was 4 in the morning. At that time, I had just fallen asleep for an hour. She was chopping in the kitchen with a loud bang. I thought it was only for half a day, so I endured it. She chopped for a long time, and I couldn't sleep, and my eyes were swollen and painful, it was very painful. I turned on the phone surveillance to see how long she was going to chop for. As a result, she finished chopping and took out the takeout boxes that I had left over. I couldn't help but widen my eyes, wondering what she was going to do. I put all the boxes in a black trash bag and threw them out every 2 or 3 days. Mom wouldn't help me throw them out. Not only did we eat separately, but we also washed our clothes and threw out our trash separately. She poured the leftover spicy noodles, river snail noodles, and oily soup from the stir-fries into the filling. She didn't even take out the paper towels that I had thrown in the boxes. While stirring, she cursed viciously, I'll let you eat, I'll make you vomit and have diarrhea. She even spat a few times. I almost threw up at that time. Then she made the dough. After pouring out the flour, she left the kitchen, went to the balcony in the living room, grabbed a handful of soil from the flower pots, and sprinkled it into the flour. Because there wasn't much soil mixed in, it couldn't be seen. But I guessed that the taste would definitely not be good. Later, she cursed while wrapping the dumplings, "Eat yourself to death. Eat yourself to death." Before Crystal could finish watching, she ran into the bathroom to vomit. It's pretty cruel for a pregnant woman to see this, especially since she ate the most that day. After the video finished, I said, "Do you understand now why I threw them in the trash?" Mom's head was buried low, and she didn't say anything. David questioned me. "Why didn't you release this video that day?" Although he didn't vomit, thinking about the dumplings he ate, his stomach must be very uncomfortable. I found it amusing. "Did you ask me for the reason? If you had asked me why I threw the dumplings in the trash, I would have released the video." David said, "We didn't ask, couldn't you have taken the initiative to say it?" I retorted. "Did you give me a chance to speak? You came in and called me unfilial and forced me to apologize to your mom. You tell me, with all the things she did, do I still need to apologize to her?" At this time, Sarah asked, "Since mom doesn't get along with her daughter-in-law, why doesn't she come to our house?" I sneered. "I advised her to come to your house, she said she didn't want to come, because..." Crystal happened to come out of the bathroom, and interrupted me, pale, and asked, "Mom doesn't like her daughter-in-law, why doesn't she come to our house?" I replied, "She said that she doesn't have any freedom at your house, and you always boss her around to do this and that." Crystal shouted, "It's impossible for mom to say bad things about me and my brother, don't even think about sowing discord. You reap what you sow." I said, "Then let's watch the surveillance." These words were what we talked about when we were eating in the dining room. Although there was no surveillance in the dining room, the kitchen surveillance could hear the sound. I persuaded Mom to stay at David's house for a while. "Don't you miss your granddaughter?" Mom said, "I don't want to go, it's too tiring at his house. I have to pick up and drop off the kids for them, running 4 trips every day. They don't care about anything on the weekends, they live their own lives. I have to take care of the kids, and cook for them, wash their clothes, and clean the house. I'm so tired every day that my back hurts. The kids these days are also hard to manage, that little girl is especially annoying, and I can't hit her or scold her. Taking care of this one child is more tiring than taking care of the 3 of you back then." David and Sarah's faces were extremely ugly. In the video, I also said, "Then Mom, why don't you go see Crystal? She's 4 months pregnant now and needs to be taken care of. You're her own mother, and you'll be more careful taking care of her." Mom shook her head repeatedly. "Oh, don't even mention her. She used to love to use her mouth, but now that she's pregnant, she's been ordering me around every day. She's also picky about her mouth, complaining that the dishes I cook don't taste good. She complains about every dish I cook. She doesn't even give me money to buy groceries, and all my retirement money has been spent on her. She also complains that I don't mop the floor clean, and tells me to mop it 5 times a day. Once in the morning, once after every meal, and once before going to bed, saying she's obsessive-compulsive. She also complains that too much of my hair is falling out. That's clearly her long hair, but she blames it on me." Crystal was so angry after watching this that she shouted at her mom, "Mom, how could you talk about me like this in front of outsiders? I've been helping you speak, but you actually said I'm picky and ordered you around to work, am I that bad?" Mom said aggrievedly, "She tricked me into saying it, she wanted to kick me out, so she tricked me into saying bad things about you." Unfortunately, the facts were all there, and her children didn't believe her anymore. My husband said, "It seems that Mom is very tired at both of your homes. It's so easy at my house, she just cooks her own food. Or she mixes a bowl of goo and eats it, and goes out to a restaurant to eat meat and rich food. She only washes her own clothes, my wife washes her own. Sweeping and mopping the floor depends on her mood, she can do it once a week, or once a month. If she doesn't mop, my wife will mop. My wife doesn't complain, and she never orders her to do work. And my house doesn't have any kids bothering her." He suddenly turned to Mom and asked, "Since you like my house so much, why did you abuse Roxanne?" Mom started crying, tears flowing down her face. She cried, "I didn't come to your house to enjoy the good life, but to take care of your wife. I hope you can have children early and give me a big, fat grandson. But you've been married for 4 months, and Roxanne's stomach hasn't moved. I came to your house to serve pregnant women, not to serve a barren hen." I retorted, "My husband went to work the 2nd day after we got married, and you started tormenting me after only being married for half a month. Did you know I wasn't pregnant at that time?" She said righteously, "How could I not know? When your sister-in-law got married, she was already 4 months pregnant. Your sister also got her marriage certificate 2 months after she got pregnant, but you've been married for half a month and there's no movement, and you still haven't gotten pregnant. Am I wronging you?" My husband was furious and roared, "In your eyes, it's very honorable to be pregnant out of wedlock, right? Was it very honorable for you to be pregnant out of wedlock back then?" I looked at him in surprise. Mom was pregnant out of wedlock back then? Was it David? David and Crystal also looked confused. Crystal asked, "Brother, what do you mean by that? Who was Mom pregnant with out of wedlock? And how do you know that?" Before my husband could answer, Mom suddenly burst into tears. "What's wrong with me wanting a grandson? Your brother had a daughter. Even if your sister has a son, he won't have the David surname. I'm just counting on you to have a son to carry on the family line, but you're slandering me like this, wah." Crystal exclaimed, "Mom, what are you talking about? Even if my child doesn't have the David surname, don't they still have a blood relationship with you? Besides, if you value this surname so much, then I'll just let my child have my surname, wouldn't that work?" David said, "Now I know that Mom values sons over daughters. I used to think you valued daughters over sons because you spoiled Crystal so much." Mom roared, "It's all my fault. I don't want to live anymore. I'll let a car hit me and die." She rushed out. David and Mark followed her out. Sarah looked at us and ran out too. Crystal glared at me. "Are you happy now that you've turned our family into this?" I said impatiently, "What does it have to do with me? Your family was a cesspool to begin with, a bunch of people who only know how to bully outsiders. Am I wrong for not letting you bully me?" Crystal called out to my husband. "David, listen to what she's saying." My husband retorted, "Is my wife wrong? You David family members band together to bully Sarah, bully your men, and want to bully my wife too, but my wife isn't someone you can mess with." Crystal was completely confused by his words. "Us David family members? Don't you have the David surname?" My husband sneered. "I have the David surname, but I'm not the same David as you." He pulled me. "Let's go home." Crystal shouted, "You've angered Mom to this point, and you're just leaving like this? Aren't you going to take care of her?" My husband said, "Crystal, remember one thing. Your mom is the way she is today because of you and David. If you were even a little bit filial to her, and didn't order her around to work all day long, she wouldn't have stayed at my house and refused to leave. So don't put the blame of unfilial piety on our heads. The real unfilial ones are you. You two siblings are hypocrites. You appear to be righteous on the surface, but you're vile and despicable on the inside. You're full of benevolence and morality, but all you think about is profit. From now on, I have nothing to do with you, so don't bother us." In Crystal's stunned state, we left. As we went downstairs, we saw Mom sitting on the ground, and David helping her up. She cried, "Don't worry about me, just let me die. I'm old, I'm useless, I'm just wasting food." Suddenly seeing us walking over, she cried even louder. I ran into the middle of the road, wanting a car to hit me and die, but it just wouldn't hit me, it went around me and drove away. Why is my life so miserable? I can't even die if I want to, wah. My husband took me to the car and drove straight away. I was a little uneasy and asked, "Do you think she'll really try to kill herself?" He said, "That has nothing to do with us either." We came back late, so we fell asleep as soon as we got into bed. The next morning, while we were still asleep, my husband's phone rang. He picked up the phone and put it on speakerphone. Crystal's voice was panicking. "David, come quick, David got into a car accident. He needs an amputation, but Sarah is gone." We rushed to the hospital. David had already entered the operating room, and Crystal had signed the papers. Mom and David's daughter were also at the hospital. She started crying again. "Why did the car have to hit my son, why didn't it hit me?" My niece suddenly roared, "Grandma, you're still saying nonsense. It's because you were cursing that Dad had a car accident." Mom was stunned. "What are you saying? I cursed your dad? I didn't curse him. You kept saying last night that you wanted a car to hit you and die, and Dad had a car accident." My 11-year-old niece was articulate and clear-headed. She quickly explained what happened at her house last night. It turned out that after we left last night, David dragged Mom back home. She kept cursing the driver who didn't hit her, saying that she wanted to die but couldn't. Sarah, annoyed, said angrily, "The driver isn't stupid, if they hit you, you'd be free, but they'd be in big trouble. Not only would they have to pay compensation, but they'd also have a psychological shadow for the rest of their lives. David slows down and goes around if there's a cat on the road when he's driving, let alone a person as big as you, how could the driver directly hit you?" As a result, David got angry again and roared at Sarah, "How can you talk to Mom like that? You know Mom is in a bad mood, and you're still yelling at her. Apologize to Mom." Sarah looked at him with disappointment. "David, I've been married to you for more than 10 years. Whenever I have a conflict with your family, you force me to apologize, regardless of whether it's my fault or not. In your heart, I'm just an outsider, right? Your mom and your sister are your family. Fine, let's get a divorce then." She went into the bedroom to pack her clothes. David rushed in and snatched her luggage. "You want a divorce, right? Then you can get out now. Everything in this house belongs to the David family, it has nothing to do with you." Sarah didn't argue at all, turned around and left. David didn't expect Sarah to really run away from home, without bringing her phone, bank card, or ID card. He was worried that something would happen to Sarah and wanted to chase her back. But Mom pulled him back and said, "What are you chasing? Her parents' house is far away, she has nowhere to go, she'll come back by herself in a little while." When a couple argues, it's a competition of who's more ruthless. If you're soft-hearted first, she'll have you wrapped around her finger in the future, running away from home at every turn. David thought his mom made sense, so he didn't chase after her. My niece cried and wanted to go find her mom, but David whipped her a few times with a clothes hanger and forced her to go back to her room to sleep. Then, in the morning, Crystal called Mom, saying that she had received a call from the police, saying that David had been in a car accident. After investigating, the police reconstructed the scene of the accident. David drove out in the middle of the night, going very fast, and almost hit a pedestrian. In order to avoid the pedestrian, he swerved sharply, but went against traffic and crashed into a large truck coming from the opposite direction. So he was very seriously injured. He was still in the operating room. Crystal said, "The doctor said that he has to have an amputation to save his life, so I could only sign the papers." Mom beat her chest and stomped her feet, shouting, "Why did the car have to hit my son? Why didn't it hit me? I'm 60 years old, I've lived enough, but my son is only 38 years old. I didn't want my son to have a car accident, heaven, take me away." Crystal roared, "Mom, shut up. You think you're cursing yourself, but you're hurting others. When we were little, you always said that we couldn't curse blindly. You said that heaven is watching what people do, and that there are gods 3 feet above the ground. You said that it's most effective to swear if you've done something bad, but it's not effective if you haven't done anything. So you wanted a car to hit you, isn't that a bad thing? Your own children all drive, and you actually used a car accident to curse, so it's backfired on David. It's backfired on your son, are you satisfied?" Mom muttered, "I was cursing myself, what could I do if the car didn't come to hit me?" Crystal shouted angrily, "You're still talking, can't you not say the word, car?" Mom cried again. "I shouldn't talk, I won't talk anymore, I'll just be a mute, wah." I looked at my husband. He immediately understood what I meant. "You go back, I'll take you." I stopped him. "You wait for David to come out. I'll go back by myself." As I turned around, I heard Crystal say, "You're heartless, David is still in surgery, his life and death are uncertain, and she's just leaving like this." My husband said coldly, "That's your brother, not my wife's brother. Your brother hasn't been that good to my wife either, why should she be considerate to him?" I returned home, but I saw Sarah standing at the door. Her eyes were red, it was clear that she had cried for a long time. She forced a smile and said, "You weren't home? No wonder I rang the doorbell, and you didn't come out." I opened the door. "Come in and sit, Sarah." She started to cry as soon as she came in. "I want a divorce." Sarah talked about all the grievances she had suffered in her husband's family over the years. There were so many, even the smallest mistake would bring criticism from the whole family. When the children were small, Mom helped Sarah take care of them in name only, but she mainly served David. The dishes she made were always David's favorites. David loved chili peppers, and lots of them. Mom stir-fried every dish with a lot of chili peppers. David praised, "The dishes my mom makes are so delicious." But Sarah was breastfeeding, and if she ate chili peppers, the children would get inflamed, and would cry when they pooped and peed. When the children cried in the middle of the night, it would disturb David's sleep. Mom would also call the whole family to have a family meeting, criticizing Sarah for not taking good care of the children and affecting David's sleep. When the children turned 2, they were sent to daycare, and Sarah went to work. Mom was responsible for picking up and dropping off the children. As soon as Sarah got off work, Mom would sigh and massage her back, saying that she was exhausted. When Crystal saw this, she would also call a family meeting, criticizing Sarah for throwing all the housework and childcare to Mom. She said, "Sarah, you have to understand, it's Mom helping you take care of the children out of love, she wouldn't have to help you if she didn't want to. Mom is helping you out of kindness, you can't just throw all the work on Mom." Sarah had just started to defend herself when Mom started to cry. In the end, Sarah was forced to apologize. I felt suffocated listening to this and asked her, "Why did you keep putting up with it?" 11 years, being suppressed and bullied by her husband, mother-in-law, and sister-in-law for so long. If it were me, I would have made a huge scene. Sarah smiled bitterly. David was my teacher. When I was in school, I was very afraid of him. I suddenly understood. I'm still afraid of my teachers from when I was in school. But how could you marry him if you were afraid of him? She sighed. I was young at the time, and I admired his knowledge. He often lectured me individually, and as soon as I graduated, he asked me if I was willing to marry him. I understood, she had a special view of her teacher. When she admired David, David was a shining presence in her eyes. When such a high-level figure proposed to her, she was probably so excited that her hands would shake. I said, "The reason why you were able to endure it for so many years is still because you loved David." She nodded. "I just loved him too much, that's why I endured it again and again. But now, I feel like he's not worth me loving him so much. My love is worthless to the David family." I said, "You came to me, how do you want me to help you?" She lowered her head and said, "He definitely doesn't want to divorce me. If I file a lawsuit, I don't have money." She looked up. "My salary card is in his hands." Her family was far away, and she had no one to turn to. She wouldn't have come to me if she wasn't desperate. I nodded. "I'll lend it to you." She was immediately moved to tears. "Thank you, Roxanne, I'll definitely pay you back." I thought about it and decided to tell her about David. However, it might not be the best time to file for divorce right now, because David had a car accident. She stood up suddenly, her face full of anxiety, and asked, "When? Is he seriously injured?" "Last night, it was a bit serious, he needs an amputation." Before I could finish speaking, she ran out. I sighed, she still loved David. My husband came back late at night. He sat down wearily on the sofa and said, "Crystal had a miscarriage." I asked in surprise, "What happened to her?" My husband said that when Sarah arrived at the hospital, Mom cursed Sarah for being a jinx, saying that it was Sarah's running away from home that led to David's car accident, and told her to get out. Crystal was so angry that she roared, "You've driven Sarah away, who will take care of David in the future?" Mom said, "I'll take care of him." "You need to be taking care of yourself, how can you take care of David?" "Let me tell you, I can't take care of David." Mom said, "If you don't want to take care of him, I'll drag him to crash into a car, and the two of us will die together." Crystal was so angry that she cried. Die, you can only use death to threaten me and David. Now you can't threaten David, so you're threatening me. I don't care anymore. If you want to die, go die." She drove angrily out of the hospital. Perhaps she was distracted because she was in a bad mood, and she also had a serious car accident. She was injured in the head, and the medication to treat her injuries would cause damage to the fetus. But if they waited for the child to be born before treating her, it would delay the injury, and she might become a vegetable. In the end, Mom decided to abandon the child and save the adult. I felt a little sad listening to this, and talked about Sarah coming to me to borrow money. I said, "Sarah is too weak, no wonder they wanted to control me like they controlled Sarah, but they made a mistake." My husband said, "You're different from Sarah, she was controlled by David before she got married. No one can control you." I nodded. David used to be a university teacher, and Sarah was his student, so David had a lot of authority in front of Sarah. Yes, actually, they didn't need my mom to come forward at all, David had Sarah completely under his control. It's just that he didn't want to say some harsh words, so as not to hurt Sarah's feelings. I suddenly understood. So he let his mom and sister do the offending, and then he pretended to be a good person. That's right. But Sarah is also a top student, can't she see through that? My husband said with amusement, "Of course she can see through it, but what can she do? She can't reason with my brother, and my brother is her boss's boss. David can make her lose her job with one word. So Sarah can only be timid in front of him." I sighed. Sarah has woken up now and wants a divorce, but she went back to take care of him after learning that David had a car accident. My husband shook his head. Since Sarah has the intention to divorce, their divorce is only a matter of time. She's taking care of David now just to ease her mind. The next day, my husband and I went to buy New Year's goods. There were only 2 days left until New Year's Eve, so it was time to prepare the New Year's goods. After we came back with the New Year's goods, Mom tagged my husband in the family group chat. "David, your brother and sister are both hospitalized and need to be taken care of. Sarah and Mark have taken a day off today, but they have to go to work tomorrow. You and Roxanne come to the hospital. You take care of your brother, and Roxanne takes care of your sister." My husband didn't reply. I asked, "Are we going tomorrow?" He shook his head. "We're not going." He opened the group and started a video call. Everyone joined. Although David and Crystal were lying in bed, they looked to be in good spirits. Mom was the first to start crying softly. "I don't have many, I only gave birth to the 3 of you. Now that David and Crystal are both hospitalized, David, Mom can only rely on you." My husband said calmly, "There are some things that I originally wanted to keep buried in my heart forever, but you've disappointed me too much lately, and I want to make things clear at this time." Mom's expression was a little panicked. "David, what do you want to say? Let's talk about it after your brother and sister are discharged." My husband replied, "You don't have to listen if you don't want to. It's enough for your son and daughter to listen." David's face darkened. "David, how can you talk to Mom like that? She's your mom, not my mom." Crystal looked confused. David, what are you talking about? Mom shouted, I know what you want to say, you just don't want to recognize me as your mom anymore. You've grown up now, your wings have hardened, and you just want to fly away, right? My husband said coldly, you were never my mom to begin with, why should I recognize you? Crystal was very surprised. David, have you gone crazy? I haven't gone crazy. Let me show you the evidence. My husband took out a paternity test, which showed that he was not related to Mom by blood. Everyone was stunned. Crystal was the most excited. We three grew up together since we were little, how could you not be Mom's son? Did Mom pick you up? My husband replied, when I was 1 year old, my parents died of food poisoning. My uncle claimed that he wanted to raise me, moved into my house, and took over all of my parents' property. My husband's story revealed a 35-year-old secret. His parents were very capable, saved a lot of money, but died young. He was just a 1-year-old child, and naturally didn't have the ability to protect his parents' property. When his uncle adopted him, his uncle's biological son, David, was 3 years old. His aunt encouraged his uncle to move to the city and buy a house. So his uncle sold the house that belonged to my husband's parents, took out all the savings that his parents had left, bought a house, and the whole family moved to the city. My husband's aunt later gave birth to a daughter, Crystal. People in the city all thought that the three of them were biological siblings. When his uncle was alive, he and his wife were still good to David. But when David was 10 years old, his uncle passed away. From then on, his aunt often found reasons to hit him and didn't give him food. After the junior high school entrance exam, his aunt also didn't let him go to high school. She wanted him to go out and work to earn money to support his brother and sister's education. David firmly disagreed. I want to study, I got into high school, why shouldn't I be allowed to study? His aunt became angry. There's no money at home. If you want to go to high school, you can find your own way. David called the police. His aunt was notified to go to the police station, and fearing that David would find out that the money they were using now was all left by David's parents, she didn't dare to let the situation escalate and was forced to agree to continue supporting David's high school education. When she came back, she called the three children together for a family meeting, complaining about the hardship of raising them, crying and calling out her husband's name, saying that she was very embarrassed today and didn't want to live anymore. David and Crystal both blamed David for calling the police and making their mother sad. David softened and thought it was really his fault, so he could only apologize to her and promise not to call the police again. Later, family meetings became commonplace. During the winter and summer vacations, whenever he was at home, he would often be called to sit in the middle of the living room to receive criticism from his mother and brother and sister. Of course, he wasn't that obedient, only his aunt's tears could make him soften. After starting work, his aunt was much better to him, always saying that she was sorry for him, that she shouldn't have been so strict with him when he was little, and hoping that he would forgive his mother. As she said this, she would cry. David would soften and give her money. A year ago, David and I met through a blind date through acquaintances. At that time, he was 34 years old, and I was 30 years old. I was surprised to learn that it was his first blind date. Don't your parents urge you to go on blind dates? He shook his head. My father is gone, and my mother never urges me to go on blind dates. Later, his sister got married, but his mother still didn't ask about his marriage. I couldn't help but joke. Are you really your mom's biological son? Why are your brother and sister both married, but your mom doesn't care about your marriage? He said, don't mention it, I've even suspected my own identity. He talked about the different treatment his aunt gave him and his two siblings when he was little. I said, I feel like your mom isn't your biological mom. We decided to find out the truth. But he had to go to work and didn't have time, so I could only investigate. I originally had no idea where to start, but Mom came to our house and pretended to want to take care of me. So I deliberately observed her every move. After several months of understanding, I noticed that she often called someone old friend when she was video chatting. That person's accent was significantly different from the accent of people in the city. I happened to have a university classmate with this accent, so I knew where Mom's old friend was from. I planned to go to the countryside to investigate, but I was afraid that Mom would become suspicious. So I found an excuse to drive her away, persuading her to stay at her eldest son's and youngest daughter's houses for a while. But she made all sorts of excuses not to go and made a lot of noise, making it impossible for me to work in peace. I got angry and told her that she wasn't allowed to watch short videos or video chat with people at my house in the future. She was very addicted to watching short videos. If she didn't look at her phone for a while, she would be like she had lost her soul. So she had no choice but to leave. But before leaving, she even made dumplings to harm me, which led to me breaking up with her. After driving Mom away, I went to the countryside in the name of finding inspiration, and I quickly learned that my real parents-in-law were not only capable, but also extremely kind-hearted. They were among the first people in the village to become wealthy, and they also led other villagers to become wealthy. I had heard stories of their charitable deeds, and there were also old newspapers more than 30 years ago preserved by the town government, with photos of them being promoted. I was overjoyed and quickly took photos with my phone. Later, when I chatted with the local old farmers, they all sighed and said, "It's a pity, good people don't live long." The couple happened to eat poisonous mushrooms and died. Yes, it's strange. They weren't unfamiliar with mushrooms. How could they pick poisonous mushrooms and bring them back to eat? It was that good-for-nothing brother of his who benefited. My heart skipped a beat, and I felt that my parents-in-law's death was suspicious. I also learned from the villagers that David's grandparents had passed away early, and his uncle's marriage was decided by his parents. His parents didn't want his uncle to marry his aunt, thinking that his aunt was too lazy and that she had corrupted his uncle. But his aunt was pregnant out of wedlock and threatened that if his uncle didn't marry her, she would accuse him of rape. His parents didn't want his uncle to go to jail, so they were forced to let this woman marry into the family. As a result, his parents died a few years later. After the investigation was almost complete, I returned home. A few days later, my husband came back on vacation. I told him the situation from beginning to end. When my husband saw the photos of his biological parents, tears welled up in his eyes. He said, "I must find out the truth about my parents' death." However, it had been 34 years, and it wasn't easy to find out the truth. The video chat that my husband initiated was to trick Mom into revealing the truth. I secretly turned on the screen recording function on my phone. My husband said, "Aunt, I found out that my parents didn't die in an accident." Mom hurriedly defended, "It was an accident, they ate poisonous mushrooms. My parents were locals and had been picking mushrooms on the mountain since they were little. Could they not recognize poisonous mushrooms? It was clearly you who poisoned them. You thought it was a secret, right? Someone saw it from the back mountain that day, but that person had a good relationship with my uncle and didn't report you. He's felt guilty all these years, and he's finally spoken out now." The house in his hometown was sold by his uncle to someone in the same village, and it was still there. I observed that there was a small mountain behind the house, and the dining room window could be seen from the mountain. Mom believed it was true and said in a panic, "It wasn't me, it was your uncle who put the poison in." "What poison?" "It was poisonous mushrooms." My husband laughed. "Go confess to the police." Mom argued, "It wasn't me who put the poison in, it was your uncle." Crystal also shouted, "David, my dad was wrong, but he's already dead. My mom raised you anyway, it's good enough that she didn't ask you to be filial to her, and you still want my mom to go to jail? Don't be so heartless." My husband said angrily, "Your parents poisoned my parents, took over my family's property, and now you want to enslave us and make us work like cows and horses for you. How can you talk to me about conscience?" Crystal said, "What do you mean by working like cows and horses? My mom always taught the three of us to love each other and help each other." My husband sneered. "She wanted me to help you a lot, but she never told you to help me. When you two just became adults, she was worried about your marriage, and asked people everywhere to introduce you to partners. Your brother is 3 years older than me, and his child is already 11 years old. You're 8 years younger than me, and you're also married. Did your mom ever worry about my marriage? She didn't want me to get married at all. I only married a wife at the age of 35, and your mom is trying to drive my wife away and make me stay single for the rest of my life. Because she saw that I have a very high income now, and calculated that as long as I don't get married and have children, my property will belong to your children in the future. You were still jealous, thinking that she was biased towards me. On the one hand, she's lazy and doesn't want to work like a cow or a horse for the two of you. On the other hand, she just wants to use some despicable methods to force my wife to leave. Your mom is a good mother to you. But to me, she's a devil." Crystal still retorted, "No matter how wrong she is, she's still your aunt. My mom has been raising you since you were 1 year old." I interrupted her. "Crystal, do you know why you and your brother had a car accident? It's because your parents did bad things and had 2 lives on their hands. Your mom even dared to curse and swear, and in the end, it backfired on you. Why are you blaming David? You can only blame your father. He married a bad woman, causing your family to be cursed for 3 generations. You guys will have even greater disasters, just wait slowly." We exited the video and went straight to the police station. I had just recorded the chat process. Mom herself admitted to poisoning. Even if her husband put the poison in, she was guilty of not reporting it. Mom was arrested. After interrogation, she confessed that after they got married, they were both lazy and greedy, causing their family to be very poor. Her brother and sister-in-law's family, on the other hand, were thriving, building a 3-story house and often going to the bank to deposit money. They were very envious and jealous, so they secretly plotted to murder them for their money. One day, she saw her sister-in-law picking some mushrooms, and quickly told her husband to pick a lot of poisonous wild mushrooms. She squeezed out the juice from the poisonous mushrooms and had her husband secretly mix it into the mushrooms that her sister-in-law stir-fried. Her brother and sister-in-law ate poisonous mushrooms and also drank baijiu. Both of them passed out. Her brother-in-law then smothered them to death. Mom stir-fried some additional poisonous mushrooms with the sister-in-law's stir-fried mushrooms. The next day, her brother-in-law cried and shouted that his brother and sister-in-law had eaten poisonous mushrooms and were gone. 34 years ago, there was no surveillance in the countryside, and everyone really thought that the couple had died from accidentally eating poisonous mushrooms, and no one reported it. Although some people privately raised questions, no one investigated further. Because, they weren't relatives, and no one wanted to meddle in other people's business. The police asked a question. You poisoned your brother and sister-in-law, why didn't you harm the child? It wasn't difficult to smother a 1-year-old child to death. Mom replied, the child was at his grandmother's house at the time, and we didn't have a chance to do it. I told my husband with lingering fear, your life when you were a child was saved by your grandmother. He nodded. Yes, after they failed to kill me at the beginning, they didn't dare to do it anymore. I understood. If anything happened to you, everyone would suspect them of murder for money. In this case, David's uncle was the principal offender, and Mom was the accomplice. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison. I don't know if she'll be able to make it until she's released. My husband hired a lawyer again to file a lawsuit, demanding that Mom return the property she had seized and seeking civil compensation. Mom's property was frozen. She had a house in her name, and 200,000 yuan in savings. In the end, they were all given to my husband. Sarah proposed a divorce after taking care of David after he was discharged from the hospital. David also knew that he couldn't keep his wife, so he reluctantly signed the divorce agreement. Sarah took her daughter away. Since David was left alone, Crystal could only come and take care of him. But it caused dissatisfaction from her husband's family, and her husband divorced her as well. After her last car accident, after she terminated the pregnancy, the doctor said that she could no longer have children. This news spread throughout her husband's family, and no man was willing to marry her anymore. From then on, only the brother and sister relied on each other for support. It really was true, harming others not only harms yourself, but also brings disaster to your descendants. My husband and I went to his biological parents' graves. My husband knelt down, and as soon as he called out, Dad, Mom, he started crying and couldn't speak. I held him and told my parents-in-law, Dad, Mom, we have avenged you, and David and I will also be happy and successful. Please rest in peace. The wildflowers on the grave nodded in the wind, as if conveying the comforting voices of my parents-in-law. We also went to his grandmother's grave. My husband said, I still have a little impression of my grandmother, because when I was 3 or 4 years old in the countryside, my grandmother often came to see me. Later, after we moved to the city, I didn't see her again. My uncle probably didn't dare to abuse me at that time, maybe he was afraid that my grandmother would come looking for me. We learned that his grandmother had passed away the year before his uncle died. After so many years, this was the first time he had come to see his grandmother. His eyes were filled with tears again. I thought that his grandmother, if she had a soul in heaven, would be happy that her grandson had grown so big. The end.